Welcome to this episode of Candid Conversations. Today, we're flying across the world. Let's see if you can figure out where we're going. You guessed it, we're in England. Yes, we're not in London though. We are going to Bath. Today we have Dr. Janet Rose with us, Principal of Norland. Thank you very much for being here with us today. Could you provide a brief overview of the history and the founding principles of Norland College for Nannies?
Yes, absolutely. Hello. Lovely for you to invite me. So thank you very much for that. Norland College has been around now for 131 years. So I won't go into the enormous detail with the history, or we'll be here all evening. But really, essentially, it was the first childcare training institution in the world for home-based childcare. So the first sort of training establishment for nannies, what back then were called nursery nurses. So she literally created the nursery nurse profession, which has become the nanny profession that we know today, and also introduced for the first time a professional role for someone caring for children in the home other than the child's own immediate caregivers or parents, of course. So in that sense, it was very pioneering. The institution was founded on two key principles or mottos. One is love never faileth, which really is about ensuring that you are the kind of person that is loving, nurturing, caring, and so on. But it wasn't just about care. It was about having the right theory, knowledge, and understanding of how to create the most optimal environment for a young child to thrive. So that was very much at the core of what Norland was all about, and what she thought a nanny, or as they were known back then, as I said, a nursery nurse should be. In that sense, she was very much influenced by the work of Friedrich Froebel, who I've probably mispronounced, a German educationist and philosopher who founded the kindergarten movement. So everything was very much centered on the child. And that's really the kind of the core guiding light, as it were. But alongside that was a second main principle, and that is strength in adversity. So this is really a recognition that looking after young children is a very demanding, complex, requiring enormous skills, insight, and expertise. Something that I think any parent would acknowledge, that,
Yes.
I'm sure every parent wishes they had spent 3 to 4 years training how best to raise their child, and perhaps that's something that might happen in the future, who knows. I'm sure one day we'll have a parenting qualification that we're teaching our young people and young children. Not so much young children, but young people certainly. So that idea of strength and adversity is very important, because it shows that you need resilience.
Yes.
And you need to be able to have strong executive functioning skills, be well organized, have good time management, having a lot of those skills, highly effective skills for managing the household, perhaps the family, working with the family. You need very strong communication skills. You need the capacity to deal with difficult conversations and difficult, challenging circumstances. And so it goes on. So in that sense, we feel that she really captured the essence in those two mottos. Even though they're 131 years old, we still feel that they're very relevant for today's working nanny, because we think you need to have both of those key attribute principles, as it were, running through your professional life, with all the accompanying skills and attributes that go with them.
So was Emily Ward a nanny herself, or a nursery nurse?
So Emily Ward herself actually trained as a teacher under Frubel, and so she initially worked in a school and set up a nursery school, and went on this journey to then set up the Norland Institute in London. And it's called Norland because it was set up at Norland Place.
Aha.
And in its place now is a private school in London. And every year, our final year students go up for a trip to London, and they do all sorts of things there to sort of familiarise themselves with London, because that's often where they end up working, but not always, because they can also work all over the world. And it's now a school, a private school, and they always stop in there to look at the heritage.
Fantastic. And talking about your students, can you elaborate a little bit on the curriculum that you use at Norland? Obviously, the principles have remained the same. But what are the highlighted areas that you focus on?
So we at Norland, we do 2 courses in essence. One is a 3-year BA degree in early childhood education and care. So the kind of degree that you would find perhaps in America, for example, for early childhood educators, or anywhere else perhaps in the world. But alongside that, and I think this is what makes Norland particularly unique, is the practical Norland diploma. And the Norland diploma is based on the original qualification that was developed by Emily Ward. And what we've essentially done over the last 130 years is sort of evolve that initial training course that contained the very important elements of theory, and combine them with those very important practical skills, and alongside that, practical placement experience. So real live hands-on experience with young children. And so those 3 elements are drawn together into these 2 courses. So the degree, of course, understandably reflects all the knowledge and understanding needed to know about children's development and how best to support it and promote it and so on. And that includes ensuring that it reflects the most cutting-edge research. So, for example, some key elements of that is understanding the new learning that's coming from the neurosciences, for example, and some other core elements that we have really expanded and developed. For example, the development of self-regulation, because we see that as the golden thread that runs through that degree and then is woven into the practical diploma alongside it. Because for us, if you can't self-regulate, then you can't co-regulate and support a child. And we take a very holistic view to that. It's not just about regulating your behavior or your feelings. It's very much about regulating your thinking, developing those executive functioning skills, but also regulating their sleep, their eating, all very important aspects. So very holistic in that sense. And so the practical diploma, of course, will teach some of those traditional skills that have been around for many, many years. We still teach them food and nutrition, so they're still learning all those cookery skills. And they learn everything from sort of filleting a fish to party cakes to sushi. So, of course, it's become much more cultural. It's become much more inclusive than perhaps 130 years ago. It's acknowledging, for example, children who have food preferences, allergies. There's so much more we now know and understand about food and nutrition. All of that is now incorporated into the basic, not just basic, but quite sophisticated cookery skills. And they still learn to sew. So a lot of people think, oh gosh, that's old-fashioned, but not so much anymore. Not so much in our new sustainable world, or certainly striving to be sustainable. That whole concept of repair and recycle. So that's very much woven through the sewing curriculum in that sense. And they make very practical things. They create beautiful role play capes, or they'll create a transitional object for a child, or an interactive pillow where they can perhaps recreate a nursery rhyme or something. So they all the time we're making it relevant to their role as a nanny. And then accompanying all of that is the real world experience. So our students go on to placements. It's nearly 40%. It's double the required placement experience here in England that one needs to become an early years educator. And they have a variety of experiences. And again, we've kept much to the traditions. So they have experiences in schools, in kindergartens or the equivalent, in daycare nurseries, for example. But they also have experiences working with families, of course, because that's where they're likely to end up working. They do both daily, they do live-in, they do full residential experiences. But alongside this, they also have a period of time with newborns, as well as in a hospital. So we're very privileged that our students are able to have some experience of a maternity ward and an emergency pediatric ward. So that's a valuable experience as well, because of course there's a whole value-added curriculum to all of this that I'll talk about a little bit in a moment. But the other aspect that I want to just flag up about placement is they all have an experience in a special needs environment. So we have a playgroup, opportunities of children with additional needs, children who have perhaps learning difficulties, and they also can spend time in an actual special needs school or a school with additional needs. So we have entire modules on inclusion, for example, on promoting anti-discriminatory practice, certainly diversity, understanding cultural differences, respecting and valuing others. Another very, very important thread running throughout the entire curriculum in every way. But just to sort of round all of that off, we have what we call our value-added curriculum. Again, another unique aspect that you probably won't find anywhere else, or certainly we haven't in the world. And that's where we teach them all those additional layers that make a Norland nanny so unique and special. So, for example, we teach them first aid. So they get pediatric first aid training. Now, that's fairly common for nannies, of course. But we also have military intelligence officers coming in who teach personal and cyber security particularly important these days. And, you know, that's where we start getting jokes about James Bond and Mary Poppins and so on. We also have a black belt instructor come in of Taekwondo, who gives them some basic skills. We're not training them to be spies or black belt karate champions or anything, but we're giving them some basic protective skills, raising their awareness of self-defense, for example, how best to protect the children in their care, and so on, because you never know what may happen. We have had graduates who were caught up in the Westminster attack, for example, and we like to think that we are helping to prepare them. And of course, this links very closely to one of the core principles of strength and adversity. So building that resilience in lots of practical ways, as well as that inner resilience in themselves. So we also cover baby massage, for example. We cover masterclasses on things like emotion coaching, which is a co-regulatory strategy, evidence-based, where we certainly promote ways to help build children's self-regulation rather than adopting some of the more perhaps more common ways of approaching children's behaviour. We don't particularly endorse the time out as such. We prefer calming corners, so we don't really go along with all of the super nannies ways of doing things. We draw a lot more on more recent research, of which there is quite a lot now, that suggests that developing children's emotional literacy and intelligence and social intelligence is what's needed here in order to build resilient children. And of course, this is, of course, helps to ensure their health and well-being. So again, not just physical health, but emotional and mental health is fundamental. Another lovely thread weaving through all that we do. And so just to finish that bit off, we do often have to emphasize that a lot of people think that we're perhaps taking a rather passive approach to managing children's behaviour. but we make it very clear that this isn't about mollycoddling children. This is about building the capacity to regulate their own behaviour, and we feed on the research that suggests this is the most effective way. So there is still boundary setting within that. There still may be consequences within that. They're still working with the child to empower them to do things differently. It's certainly not letting children get away with poor behaviour, but it is very much building that inner sort of structure, shall we say, for self-regulation. So those are some of the sort of things that happen. And then finally, just the last icing on the cake is that we prepare them for employment. This again is woven throughout the 3 years, but we sort of finish off, as it were, with employment weeks. In that time, we teach them about tax and pensions and contracts and insurance, and again, very important aspects for someone who's going to become self-employed. We have some wonderful optional modules as well that focus on particular aspects such as trauma. That's something that is getting important attention now, quite rightly. And even though many of our graduates may go on to work with perhaps more high net worth families, everyone can experience trauma.
Yes.
And we all experienced a global trauma with the pandemic, for example. So we also have focuses on the STEM or the STEAM subjects, so science and maths and arts and so on. Or we might have a focus on perhaps someone who wants to become a specialist working with young children, or perhaps specialism on siblings. That's another common topic or common challenge that people might have. And also many of our graduates go on to become entrepreneurs. So we cover that aspect as well. So it is quite it's a lot to explain, but you can see how incredibly comprehensive it is.
It is. And thank you very much for sharing all of that with us. It did bring me back to my nursery nursing training days.
Oh, yeah.
Not all of it, but most of it. And it's interesting to see how everything has evolved through the years. Obviously, I took my nursery nursing training 30 years ago. So it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But I'm of the same view that children learn better or live better if they are loved and know that they are loved.
I mean, that's the linchpin. And for us, having love never faileth as our core motto, as well as the resilience building element, for us just captures all of it. And, you know, everything really emanates from there.
All right, so let's move on to the Norland uniform. It's iconic. Most people in the world know what a Norland uniform looks like. Could you share a little bit about the significance behind the uniform? And I know by speaking to your students that they don't wear it every day, and they wear it for special occasions once they're finished their training. And I know that there are two different uniforms now. There's a beige one and a blue one.
That's right. Yeah.
So could you talk to us a little bit about the uniform?
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, it gets a lot of attention, and and of course we continue to have many debates about should we, you know, is it making us look too old-fashioned? Are we still relevant for a modern society, 21st century global world? So this goes back and forth, but we have retained the uniform. Partly because, as you rightly say, it is iconic. But it also sets us apart. But really, for us, the uniform is a symbol. It's a symbolic representation of a professional role. And the reason why we've retained it, although adapted it over time, and as you say, we have a practical uniform. They always did, in fact, which is blue, and we've retained the kind of brown, traditional brown, for the formal uniform. So the formal uniform is used for the degree elements of the lecturing, the formal occasions, graduation, and so on. And the practical uniform is used for all the practical masterclasses and for practical skills, for placements, and so on. And the uniforms, reflect the nature of what they'll be doing. We also have introduced a gender neutral uniform as well. So I think it was very genderized in the past, and it's less so now. So anyone can wear either, for example, and have a choice with that. But the students themselves want to wear it.
Yes.
So we often ask them this periodically. We think, is it putting students off coming to us, but actually they also know it's one of the main reasons. They want to sort of wear this uniform with pride.
Yes.
That shows that it sets them apart and it reflects the professionalism of their role. So for us, if you think about a lot of professions, perhaps less so than they used to be, but nonetheless, many professions have a uniform of such. The nurse, the medical profession, for example, in the services, the police officers. I mean, there are many professions that wear some semblance of a uniform. And so for us, it very much represents not just 131 years of heritage and traditional values, but also we've modernized it in the sense of reflecting a more up-to-date world. So we have retained it, and we know it's controversial, especially the hats, as you can imagine, but again, I think it makes it special. And we like to say at Norland that we're elite, but we're not elitist. And I think that's a very important distinction to make, because I think there's a lot of stereotypes and myths and legends, and we're very much trying to encourage a non-genderized profession. So we welcome male applicants. We also welcome students from all backgrounds.
Fantastic.
This isn't some posh finishing school. 80% of our students come from the state school sector, so they're not privately educated. We have a very strong widening participation program. We have clients all over the world from all sorts of families and backgrounds and cultures. And so we really want our student population to reflect that diverse world. So we very much welcome students from different ethnic backgrounds, for example. We have a strong bursary program to encourage students from different backgrounds to come and as well, and so on. So we are trying to challenge some of the stereotypes, the sort of Mary Poppins stereotype around that. And whilst we realise that the uniform does reflect that a little bit, nonetheless, we feel it still is presenting something to the world that sets us apart, but we hope in a positive, inclusive way.
Fantastic, thank you. And how does Norland College stay current with advancement in childcare practices, early childhood education, and evolving family dynamics?
Yeah, very, very good point. Well, in order to not look obsolete and irrelevant, it's very important that we do that, because at the end of the day, we're here to meet the needs of children and their families. So it's very important that we remain in touch with what those needs are. So one of the ways we remain in touch with a child's development, for example, and needs, is we have our own home-based Childcare research centre, which is fairly new actually, although we have been doing research for some time. And we've also launched our own professional research journal focused on home-based childcare. So we're trying to contribute to the field, particularly the field of home-based childcare, because it's very under-researched. And we want to try and give more attention and focus to it, and have contributions. It's an open access, but nonetheless peer-reviewed academic journal, for example. And we have conferences to invite the latest research and developments, and so on. We make sure all our staff remain up to date. They're all educated to a certain standard. Recently, myself and one other head of department, Julia Gaskell, who herself is a Norlander. So we do have Norlanders who come back, which is great to work at Norland.
It's lovely.
And we've recently been undertaking a fellowship in early relational health at the University of Massachusetts in America.
Nice.
So that's one way we help to ensure that we remain up to date. And of course, that covers all the latest research and thinking on children's development and what will create the most optimal environment for early relational health and also for long-term mental health and well-being. And we have masterclasses from experts around the world as well. So for example, we have a masterclass on neurophysiology, so the latest sort of research on physical development and reflexes and how, and some of the challenges that come from retained reflexes, etc. So we have masterclasses on executive functioning, latest developments on how we can promote speech and language development, for example. So we have specialists who come in and talk about that. So that's another way. We also publish and write as well. We're developing best practice guides. We hope to write a book one day, but keep putting one day that will get written as well. So there's lots of different ways that we're trying to make sure we do remain relevant and up to date. But also in terms of our children and families' needs, we are in close contact with our clients and our graduates. We invite contributions from our graduates of their experiences out in the real world, blogs, for example. And we also have an annual survey with our clients to sort of check what do they feel that nannies need, what is there anything that we're not covering that they think might be important. So we're constantly looking at ways of continually improving what we provide and what we offer to make sure it does remain cutting edge and relevant.
Fantastic, thank you. And I know that Norland College now accepts international students. Is the admissions process different to somebody who's applying from the UK? And how is that, obviously with Brexit, how has that been affected by Brexit? Because obviously students will need to get a visa.
That's right, absolutely. So when post-Brexit, we applied for, what you have to do in England is to apply for a student sponsor license, which means you're allowed to take international students. So we're very excited that we can now take international students from all over the world. So yes, there is a process, but we have our own international student manager. Yeah. So we take them to, if they're students who don't have English as a first language, then we talk them through the process of what they might need to demonstrate their English language capability, for example. The actual entrance qualification would be the same in the sense of the same kind of level of academic capability, but we take into account international qualifications and their equivalents, and we're not asking for any one specific type of entry-level qualification. We look at what the equivalent would be, and we're interested in both vocational-based as well as academic-based school qualifications, for example, high school graduate diploma, for example. And so on, and we particularly are interested in students from America. Actually, that's not to say we're not interested in students from elsewhere, but the reason why we're particularly keen is because we have lots of jobs in America, yes, and we can't fill them. And so, just in New York alone, in the last few years, we've had 70 jobs we couldn't fill. So there's lots of jobs. We still have 100% employability despite the economic turbulence.
Yes.
Both post-pandemic and during the pandemic, we have always had more demand than supply. We haven't deliberately kept it like that. We're not like De Beers trying to hoard diamonds or anything, but we've always thankfully had more of a demand than a supply, and because it is quite a lengthy process to train a Norland nanny and yes, educate a Norland nanny. And so we are able to place all our graduates who finish their degree in a probationary post for a year. We call them our newly qualified nannies, where we just sort of polish things off, as it were. Yes. And that's paid employment at a very, very good salary. Within a year of graduating, they're on above average qualifications. And so in that sense, we can offer places all over the world for the international students. And the great thing about if you're an American, for example, wanting to go back into to work in America, whilst you might need a visa to come here, and we do help you through that process, you don't have to worry about needing a visa to go back and work, because that's one of the challenges that our British students have. So, for example, so yeah, so in that sense, but we have students from Australia, from Asia, from Europe, and so it goes on.
Okay, fantastic. And finally, based on your extensive experience, what are 3 key tips that you would offer aspiring nannies to become exceptional in their profession and positively impact the families they work with?
Oh, wow. Just 3. Well, I mean, for me, you need to have that passion and commitment to want to work with children. You want to be fascinated by and enthralled by and delighted by children. And so if you don't, so I don't know if that's so much a tip as an attribute to be a successful nanny, because that will carry you through everything. I feel. I think the second most, the best tip really is to have a really good understanding of self-regulation. I think it's the linchpin. I know I've talked about it already, but it's for us, it's the linchpin of looking after children, because if they are able to regulate their eating, their sleep, their thinking, their behavior, that's essentially what resilience is. So that no matter what does happen to them in their life, they will be able to, tolerate, shall we say, the stress of living, whatever it throws at them. So knowing and understanding the best and optimal way to promote and develop that, I think, is an essential element to being an excellent nanny. And I suppose the third one for me would very much be about ensuring that you have the inclusive values, that you help that child prepare to operate in a world that is inclusive, that is anti-discriminatory, that is global, that is respectful, and so that you yourself have the kind of values that you would want that child to have.
Yes.
So again, I don't know how much they're actual tips so much, but there's certainly the core elements that we're trying to promote with our own students, and knowing that they're going to go on to a professional role. That's another layer to all of this, is that childcare in general is viewed as low status, low value, low paid. Our graduates, thankfully, not in terms of salary, but certainly they are still deemed low status and low skills. We know different, and so we've set up a professional association of Norlanders, and I think that the more nannies join professional associations like the ones you have over in America, the better, really. And we ensure through that process that our nannies continue with their professional development. Another important element to being an effective nanny, I think, to stay up to date, to make sure that you're reflecting current best practice, and so on. So I guess that's a full top tip, if anything. And so on. So yeah, I think we would flag up those things. So.
Fantastic. So if a student is interested in joining Norland or getting more information about Norland, how would they go about it?
Well, all they have to do is just Google Norland College, and everything's there. The application process. If you're an international student, all that information is there as well. You have to go through a particular system in England, but that is explained to you on our website. We have sort of live chats that you can have with current students, so you can get the real inside information there.
Lovely.
As well, and or you can literally just contact, email admissions, our admissions office. So all of this information is easily available. Of course, sign up to our social media accounts, we've got many documentaries. Oh, by the way, it's important to mention that many of these documentaries don't necessarily have the content that we would want to flag up. You know, they're mostly interested in the skid pan,
Yes,
which is another part of our value added, and it's not training them to escape paparazzi like these people
like they say, yes.
This is about safe driving
Driving.
under difficult circumstances with 2 crying children in the back after a long day, and the roads are treacherous, and we know that the world's weather is getting more and more complicated. So this is all about optimizing their capacity to look after young children. So you can watch the documentaries and get an insight, but do have a look at the information that we provide as well, which gives you much more the breadth of what we offer, and so on.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Janet. It was lovely to hear everything about Norland, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Thank you so much. And may I just finish off by saying that we do welcome anyone and everyone to Norland. And so one thing that we're particularly keen to challenge is imposter syndrome. I suspect you've heard of it over there.
Yes.
We hear this a lot from our students thinking, oh, I don't think I'd be able to be a Norland nanny. But, you know, we do encourage people to come along. There are many different families out there. We need many different students. And don't forget, you'll be coming to one of the best places in the world, which has recently been endorsed, as showing off in the background. And if you don't know what that means, it's a Teaching Excellence Gold Award. And this is awarded by the English government to higher education institutions like ourselves, because we're the equivalent of a university. We're not quite called Norland University yet, but we will be. You go on a little journey for that.
Yes.
And we were awarded the top prize for that. So that's not us saying we're the best in the world. That's the university regulator and the British government saying we're one of the best. So you can be reassured that you really will be getting a high quality course and a high quality experience. Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate you wanting to hear more about Norland.
You're very welcome, and congratulations on your award.
Thank you.